All right, what's going on, guys? My name is G-Dog-Casey, and this is actually my second attempt at making this video. The first one was plagued with all sorts of hilarious shenanigans. During one part of it, I spilled an entire mug of coffee all over my keyboard. Somehow, miraculously, it's still alive and kicking. But that wasn't even the big reason why I had to do a redo. The big reason was my mic wasn't recording the entire time. It's been so long since I've made a YouTube video that I slipped right back into rookie YouTuber and just made that silly mistake. And I was actually like just finishing my second favorite moment when I realized. So I went through almost the entire thing. Anyway, let's try again. So in this video, I'm going to be going over my top 10 favorite moments in the Wheel of Time book series. I just finished the entire series maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, basically like 1 week before the show came out. And I need to talk about it. You know, none of my close friends or family have read the books, and I need to get these moments off of my chest. I took some time to really settle in and really think about it. I agonized over this list for a while. I eventually just forced myself to rank these. Some moments that didn't make it on a different day might have been able to make it. And you know, you might be able to mix this list around on any given day depending on how I feel. But I do want to go over a few caveats before we jump right into the list. The first caveat is that you've probably already seen other top 10 favorite moments videos, and these are coming from primarily what I would consider booktubers, like established YouTubers that have been reading all sorts of fantasy books and making all sorts of videos about fantasy and doing a great job on it. That is not me. As you can tell, I have no bookshelf in my background. I haven't even set up the background to be appealing at all because I don't know. I needed to make this video mostly for me, but I would love it if you guys watched and had some insight and, you know, enjoyed the ride along with me, because it's just really fun to relive a lot of these moments. Another caveat, definitely going to be hardcore spoilers. The entire video is going to be a spoiler right up to the very end. So if you haven't finished, you should not watch this video. Just come back to it once you're done. Like I did, there was a bunch of videos I kind of knew I wanted to watch once I was done, and I saved them until then, and it was worth it. Don't spoil yourself. It's not worth it. Just come back later. And then finally, I experienced this entire story through audiobook. So a lot of these moments are going to be elevated to me almost purely on the quality of narration that we get from Kate Redding and Michael Kramer in this series. I mean, in some cases you might have stories that are read by some narrators and it kind of takes away from your imagination, and it's not the best way to experience the book maybe. But and I'm not saying that audiobook is the best way for Wheel of Time, but in my honest opinion, these narrators did such a fantastic job. They elevated the story. They helped with the pronunciation of so many names and words. And honestly, just the emotion put into some of these moments by the narrators is absolutely fantastic. Particularly Michael Kramer. This guy, he speaks to me through the book and he just narrates things perfectly. So I'm going to try my best not to keep bringing up the quality of the narration during these moments, but just keep in mind in most of them, you know, it was elevated by how well it was narrated. And then finally, you know, I'm not a hardcore fantasy reader. I've definitely had moments in my life where I've read a lot of books, but I'm not a professional critiquer. I'm not a professional booktuber. So maybe I'm going to make some mistakes. Maybe my opinions are not perfect, but this is my thoughts. And I don't think you really need to be an expert to be able to share your favorite moments in a series. But I just want you guys to know I haven't read every single series out there. My true experience is basically The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, the entire Drizzt series, which is actually quite big, and you know, Through the Forgotten Realms and R.A. Salvatore. I read basically everything Drizzt related except for the final. I think it's a trilogy maybe, or maybe it's just one book. And also just a, you know, small shout out to one of my favorite series, the Belgariad, which ties into the Malorian, which is another fantasy series that I've read that I see like almost no one ever talk about, which I think is criminally underrated. But then again, it's been a long time since I've read it, so I might do a reread of it sometime soon to see if it still sticks and if it's still as good as I remember. But that stuff was really good. Anyway, this is not about that. This is about the Wheel of Time, and we're going to jump right into it. starting at my number 10 moment, starting literally from the beginning. The prologue of Eye of the World, Dragonmount. This was the first experience I ever had with the Wheel of Time with Michael Kramer. And it just blew me away right from the start. It sets up the world in some ways just so well. You see this Luz Theron gentleman. You have no idea who he is. He seems to be insane. He's kind of shambling around this like wreckage of a palace. And you don't really know much. And then a man shows up who I don't remember. I don't think this is actually the Dark Lord. I think it's one of the Forsaken, but I can't remember. There are so many Forsaken with names, and then they die, and then they come back to life with different names and different looks, and it can be very confusing. I've only read the book once, so I apologize if I make some mistakes there, but there's this Forsaken who kind of heals Lewis Theron, but just heals his insanity. He doesn't heal his like pain, just so that he can take a look around and see what he's done. And what he realizes is that he's almost destroyed the world, and well, not the world actually, but he's destroyed everything that he holds dear. Everyone he loved, including his dear wife, Ilyena. And I don't know, man, when I hear Lewis Theron just moaning about Ilyena, it just, it puts a spike through my heart. It's like this guy killed his wife by accident in a moment of total insanity, and the Forsaken is just reveling in his sadness and in his pain. And just egging him on and just telling him, like, we've done this 1,000 times through all the different turnings of the wheel, and I win every time, and you always end up like this, and blah, blah, blah. So Luz Theron decides to just take in as much of the one power as is not even possible, because basically everything explodes. He creates Dragonmount on an area of flat land. This mountain just erects out of nowhere, and that's the end of Luz Theron. And then we start chapter 1, where it's just, into the actual beginning of the book. But I feel like this prologue it really set the tone for me. I was deeply intrigued about Luz Theron, and I was really happy that we got to learn more about him later on. But that's going to be my 10th moment, my 10th favorite moment of the Wheel of Time. All right, and for moment number 2, we go from the very beginning of the book to almost the very end of the entire series in Memory of Light. This is chapter 39, Those Who Fight. And my favorite moment in this chapter is we have Orville. Orville is this young boy who has been following Matt around for quite a while. Matt kind of rescues him or takes him on to take care of him because he's this young boy and he's got nowhere to go. His family's been killed by Trollocs, I think, or by something, and he's like all alone. He's like an orphan. So Matt takes him in, and he basically like joins the band of the Red Hand as like a young boy. He hangs out a lot with some of the females that he's kind of a little bit of a young womanizer, kind of like Matt, and he loves kind of pretending to be a young boy, but at the same time cuddling up with some of the the females that he likes, and taking advantage of that. But this moment in particular is not a fun moment for him. He finds himself with the Horn of Valir because Fail is being chased down by a bunch of stuff. Shido, I can't fully, there's just so many things going on, but Fail's being chased off by Trollocs and Shido. So she like quickly makes a decision to give Orville the horn and just tell him like, hide with it. I can't have it. Everyone knows I have it. So he tells him to hide with it. Orville has to run from Trollocs, and he uses Bella to get away. Bella the horse, who made it all the way to this point, finally ends up dying here. And Orville crawls into like a crack of a mountain, some sort of like little cavern that he can like crawl into, but it doesn't go that deep. So actually the situation is he's huddled up with the horn, like just terrified, and he's got Trollocs reaching into this cavern, like scratching at his legs, trying to pull him out, and like eventually they're gonna get him. You just know, like eventually someone's gonna get a good hold on him and pull him out. So he does what anyone would probably do in this moment, where he desperately blows on the Horn of Valir. And the whole time, you're not really sure it would work, right? Because the horn has kind of been tied to Matt since book 2. But there are some theories, and not even theories, more like pretty much confirmations that there's a moment in the book earlier where Matt kind of dies. and then comes back to life. And during this moment, it kind of frees him of his bond to the horn. Apparently, that's the theory anyway. So Orville is able to blow the horn, and he becomes the new horn blower. And when he does this, the companions of the horn, or the heroes of the horn, are spawning in to help with the final battle over where the actual battle is happening, not where Orville is. And they're all coming in and they're helping. This is the final battle of the entire book. It's basically the climax of the final battle. One of them, anyway. There's a lot. And when all these heroes spawn in and start charging out to help Matt, there's one hero breaks off and goes a different way. And immediately I knew who it was. And I'll say there's a lot of times where I thought I knew something and I ended up being wrong about it. But in this case, I'm glad I was right. This one hero just shoots off in a different direction, and he's going to save Orville. It turns out to be Jane Farstrider, or who we know that person better as Noel. Noel was this old man who was kind of he was one of Matt's friends. He kind of joins Matt, and he's sort of part of the Band of the Red Hand. And he took a liking to Orville, was kind of just telling him stories, like adventure stories of the past, of this hero called Jane Farstrider. We later on find out that Noel actually is Jane Farstrider, but Orville doesn't actually know that. So in this moment, it takes some time in the book, but eventually Orville and Noel meet up again, and Noel is there to save him as Jane Farstrider. And Orville just has this moment where, everyone in his family had died or left him, and at the end of the day, the one person who came back to save him, even though he thought he was dead, ends up being Noel/Jane Farstrider. And they get to have a little talk, and it's adorable. And I don't see this moment on a lot of people's lists. But for me, maybe it's a little bit of recency bias because it's near the end of the book and it's still sitting with me. But I just absolutely love this moment. And that's why it makes number 9. Okay, and on to number 8, my 8th favorite moment of the Wheel of Time series. And just quickly before I get into this one, I forgot to shout out this amazing reread article on tor.com, Tor.com. I'm going to leave a link in the description for the main page of this reread so that you can go in and check this out. I mean, I think it's one of the best ways to kind of quickly summarize, well, sort of quickly. I mean, it's still pretty long, but you can summarize what's going on, and it's made my job doing research on these moments very easy. Anytime I Google something vaguely, like Orville blows the horn of light, or the horn of Valier, it actually comes up this article, and then anytime I Google any question, this article seems to come up, linking to the exact right moment. It's written by somebody named Lee Butler, and honestly, even their own kind of interjections into what they feel about the book and the story, it's really awesome to read as a Wheel of Time fan, and I feel like I share a lot of the same opinions as this person. They like the Orville moment too, okay? So I like it, they like it. I feel like, they understand what I understand. So I want to shout out this website. Check the link below because it is awesome to just go through and relive some of these moments. And I'm using it to summarize a lot of these favorite moments. Number 8. This is a moment where Elaine and Aviendha become first sisters. It takes part in Winter's Heart during one of the prologues. And I will honestly say, Elaine, not one of my favorite characters. In fact, maybe one of my least favorite characters, in all honesty. I find she just does a lot of stupid things and gets herself in trouble stupidly because she thinks she's smart, but she's doing stupid things. And Brigida always has to save her life. And it gets really frustrating, like almost right up to the very end. She's just constantly just doing dumb stuff. And, she's really not one of my favorite characters. But in this moment, we get a real zoom in on her, on Aviendha, and especially on the way the Aiel culture works. And this little ceremony that they do to become first sisters was just amazing. The fact that it happens kind of right during the slog of the Wheel of Time as well was pretty surprising to me, because this stood out in that slog as a great moment where they are becoming first sisters. And they are basically in this room with a bunch of wise women, like Aiel, Aes Sedai, sort of. And the wise women are channeling, which is sort of creating this bond. The bond is not the right word to use because in the Wheel of Time context, that means something else for warders and Aes Sedai. But it's like a bond. It's just not the same thing. And it's also kind of like the oath rod, where they're kind of promising themselves to each other, but it's also not the oath rod. It's just kind of like that. Maybe a combination of the oath rod and a bond, you know? There's something magical, but it's not really focused around that. It's really just them two promising each other. And during this time, they get to talk to each other. The wise women are having them tell each other what do you love about each other, and what do you hate about each other. And one of my favorite moments is when they're talking about both of these things. Like Elaine just loves how confident Avienda is. She feels like she's never she never doesn't know what to do, whereas Avienda just also thinks kind of the same thing about Elaine. Like Elaine is brave and confident, and they basically boost each other up this way. What I really love is when they start talking about what they don't like about each other, where Elaine is like, Avienda she always goes right to violence first. She's always thinking about her belt knife before anything else. And then Avienda is like, yeah, well, Elaine just uses her looks for everything. She knows that she can get what she wants from men by just showing some of her bosom and using her good looks to take advantage of what men want. And it's just really funny because they're kind of insulting each other, and it hurts because, they're real insults. But at the same time, they're just really locking themselves together, the good and the bad. And even at the end of it all, they even smack each other as hard as possible. And I guess it's supposed to be like, there you go. You guys have just hit each other for the final time. And now you're locked in as first sisters, and there's no conflict anymore. You guys have gotten everything out of the way, and from now on, you guys are essentially connected as like best friends or family, first sisters. And actually, in the Aiel culture, first sisters can actually share a husband, which tends to kind of match with what they're doing with Rand. So it's it fits. I think probably more the thing I like most is the Aiel culture part of it, but I had some love for Elaine in this moment, and everyone loves Avienda. Avienda is a fantastic character, so I have no problems really with her. She doesn't really do dumb stuff like Elaine does, at least not as much. So yeah, but I wanted to give some love for these characters in this moment as my number 8 spot, because it was memorable, and when I was reading through it or listening through it, this was one of Kate Redding's greatest moments in my opinion, because they were just they were talking to each other, and she did that so well, and I wanted to shine some light on it. So this moment, my number 8 favorite moment in the Wheel of Time. All right, so for the number 7 moment, we're already getting into these moments where from 7 down, I think that on any given day, I could rearrange these in a different way. This moment comes from Gathering Storm, chapter 50, Veins of Gold, right towards the end of this book. And actually, a moment that's further up on this list happens almost right before this, which kind of sets this moment up. So we'll talk about that later on in this video. This moment, though, is kind of like the aftermath of the epic moment that we'll talk about later, where Rand is sitting on top of Dragon Mountain. He just came from Ebu Dar. He was thinking about just demolishing the Shan all by himself, because he just really needs them to either work with him or get the hell out of his way. And he tried to get them to work with him, and they wouldn't. So now he's like, you know what? He just had a major freak out, and he's ready to just blast them off the face of the planet. But while he's walking through Ebu Dar, he's noticing people here seem happy. They seem like they're not in too much trouble. And also, nobody recognizes him. He's used to just being around his friends and his family, who is all terrified of him at this point because of how he's been acting recently and the things that he's going through. I gotta say, I mean, Rand is, in my opinion, one of the greatest characters I've ever read. Probably the greatest character I've ever read. The amount of development he goes through. Farm boy, learning he has power, practicing with his power, confident with his power, and then lack of confidence because he doesn't think he can actually do what needs to be done, and then hardening himself against everybody who loves him because he can't have close relationships, because if he does, then those are weaknesses that the Dark One can target, and they have targeted. So he has proof of that. So as far as he's concerned, he's making the right choice in being this hard, like, landmine. Like, he's about to just explode because he's just going under so much, like the weight of the world. So this is his moment where he's on top of Dragonmount, and he's two things at once. He's arguing with Lewis Terran in his mind because, you know, Lewis Terran just wants to die. He's been telling Rand all along, like, as long as I can die at the end of this, I'll be happy. So he's kind of guiding him that way. And Rand is always thinking, like, maybe there's some other way we can handle this. Maybe you don't have to die. But at this point, he's really thinking, like, you know what? Like, maybe you're right. Maybe death really is, like, I crave death as well. I just need this to be over. And then he gets up and he starts yelling into the world. I don't think anyone can hear him, even though it says that his voice is amplified and he's basically shouting like a god down on the world. I mean, actually, Tar Valon isn't that far from Dragonmount, so it could be possible that people could be hearing him. I don't really remember. But he's yelling at them about how, like, why does life have to be this way? Why is this pattern constantly reweaving itself? We go through age after age of this misery and this, you know, this desperation, and maybe it would be better if we just gave up now and just let the Dark One win. Or maybe I'll just blow everything up right now. And he starts, like, drawing in all this power, even more power than when he cleansed Sidene with Nynaeve way back in a previous book. You know, that was kind of the time where he drew on the most power he had ever had, and he needed Nynaeve's help to do it. But this, he's doing even more than that just by himself, and you get the sense, like, he's already on Dragonmount, so he's either going to just, like, create an even bigger Dragonmount and take himself with it, or maybe just destroy the entire world. You don't really know. He's at the end of his wits, and he's asking himself, like, why do we do this? Why are we always going through this? And then just randomly, right when he's kind of about to lose his entire mind, Lewis Theron enters his mind again, but this time he sounds 100% lucid, even reverent, the book says. He's reverent and lucid. And he's like, well, maybe it's so that we can have a second chance. And then everything kind of stops, and Rand starts thinking about it, starts thinking about his father and everything. And, you know, I gotta say, like, on reflection, this moment kind of is a trope where it's like evil is winning, but then at the end, like, love wins out. And it's kind of a, you know, you can look at it as like a silly kind of trope, but I'll tell you, like, it didn't matter. In the moment when I was listening to Michael Kramer narrate this stuff to me, and I was just sitting there, like, I was so nervous, I was so tense, I didn't know what was going to happen, and I was totally happy with this. And then, you know, he starts realizing, like, actually, this is, you know, we do this so that we can experience love, we get to live, we get family, we get friends, and even if there's hardships, you know, the positives far outweigh the negatives. And, you know, I mean, like I said, it's kind of cliche and kind of tropey, but it hit just as hard anyway. And the only thing I was really sad about was after this moment, Rand and Luz Theron essentially fully combine into one person. And Rand knows he'll never hear Luz Theron in his mind again. Which sucks for me because I love that dynamic that they had. And I was, you know, I didn't want that to really end. It would have been cooler. Well, maybe not, but it would have been nice if they could have still talked to each other. But instead, from here on, this is basically Rand's, like, final character development moment where he becomes his final form, where, you know, he is literally Rand and Luz Theron as one. They're both the same person. They have the same memories, all the way back from the previous age. Everything that happened there, everything happening in this age. But Rand, it's like 55% Rand, 45% Luz Theron. At least that's how I took it. And yeah, anyway, this moment is just so good. I had to gush about it for a long time, and I'm going to continue to do that. So hopefully you're okay with that. But that's number 7. I mean, it could be like number 2. I swear. It's a fantastic moment, and it's a great way to end that book. And I was so, especially because of what happened right before it, but we'll get to that. Anyway, that's number 7. We'll move on now to the next one. Okay, So number 6 for my favorite moments in the Wheel of Time is taking part in Towers of Midnight. It's chapter 40, A Making. This is where Perrin forges his amazing hammer. And it happens after he wakes up from the dream world, or the wolf dream, and he has just lost Hopper. He completed his mission to, I think they were trying to move the dream spike so that they can actually use gateways in this location. And technically he succeeded in that mission against Slayer, but in the process, Hopper actually dies in the wolf dream, which means he's literally gone now forever. Hopper already died in real life way earlier in the books, and it was a sad moment then, but Perrin kind of realizes, oh, Hopper's still around in the wolf dream, so Hopper becomes his like wolf spirit or his wolf tutor. Elias also plays this kind of role as well, but to me, I was more attached to Hopper. And Hopper in these later books is really like helping Perrin get better at handling the wolf dream and get stronger and stronger so he can take on Slayer. Which maybe that part of the book isn't one of my favorites, but the Hopper-Perrin dynamic was so good. So when he wakes up from this wolf dream and he's just devastated, like he just lost one of his closest friends, Fael's trying to comfort him, but it's not really working. Perrin has to go and do something with his hands. And it's one of my favorite things about Perrin. He has many moments like this in the story where he goes off on his own and he just starts doing manual labor. Maybe he's fixing a wooden wheel on a carriage, or he's visiting a blacksmith, I think in the Stone of Tyr, and he's just like asking him, hey, can I do some work? Just, I need to get my mind right. And whenever he's doing manual labor and he's inside his own head and he's working things out, are my favorite moments with Perrin, because he's so introspective and he's just, I really, really love this character. And this moment was a climax in some regard to that part of him where he's hammering. He starts off trying to make some horseshoes, but it's just not hard enough. He needs to do something amazing. So he just starts making something. And then he has Grady and Niall to kind of help him forge a flame, because the forge he's using is like this shitty forge that they just kind of, handmade just for that location. It's not a very good forge. So the Ashaman are helping with like the one power to create a good flame so he can make this. And then while they're going, he's just hammering and he's just thinking and thinking. Even Aes Sedai join the Ashaman and they work with them, which is epic in and of itself. It's really, really rare to have that happen in this world, for where the Aes Sedai and the Ashaman are working together, and they're just drawn to it. And it's because Perrin is Talviran and he has control over the pattern in a way that even he can't control, but these people are doing this because the pattern is forcing them, basically. They don't know why. It just feels right, is what they say. And at the end of it, he has this fantastic hammer. I want to just take a quick second. I mentioned I read the Drizzt books earlier, and if any of you guys have read them, you'll probably recognize this moment. It feels very similar to when Bruenor makes his hammer, Aegis Fang, and he ends up giving the hammer to somebody else, and it's very similar, where Bruenor pouring everything into this craft. And actually, Bruenor will never make anything close to like that again. It's kind of similar with Perrin, where he puts everything into this, and he has this fantastic hammer. He even has similar mechanics, I guess, or whatever, to the hammer that Bruenor makes, and it's also very similar to Thor's hammer. It has this excellent engraving of a wolf on it, and the wolf is soaring through the sky, and it's obviously like a tribute to Hopper. And Perrin just asks anyone in particular, he just asks out loud, does anyone know the old tongue for he who soars? And Berelain actually has the answer. She says Ma Alanir, or Ma Alanir. It even sounds like Mjolnir a little bit, and that is the old tongue for he who soars, which is Hopper. And it's just perfect, in my opinion. It's so good. I was so ready for this, and now that he's got this epic hammer, probably the best hammer in the world, now he really is a lord, or a king even, of Manetheren. I don't know, but it's just an amazing moment, and that's why it is number 6. Okay, moving on to number 5. This moment, again, any of these moments could be almost anyone's number 1 pick. This moment takes place at the very end of The Lord of Chaos, Book 6, Chapter 55, Dumai's Wells. And essentially there's like a whole arc here that is just incredible. And when I finished book 6, I don't know that I've ever been more raring to go on further into an epic long series than I was at the end of this one. Unfortunately, it leads almost right into the slug, which sucks a little bit, but there are still fantastic moments in the slog. It's just that it's very, very long, and the main story kind of stops moving forward at least a little bit. But anyway, Do My as Wells, it starts off with Rand being kidnapped by Aes Sedai. I think there's 13 Aes Sedai that throw him in a box and they shield him, and they don't necessarily torture him, but it's basically torture, or maybe they do torture him. I can't remember. He's essentially traumatized by being in this box for so long. They actually walk him from whatever city he was in. It might have been Camelin, it might have been Kyrian. I can't remember what city he was in, but they walk him from there, and they're heading to Tar Valon, and it is an incredible long journey. So he's in this box for an incredibly long time, and he's going insane, and he's talking, or he's in his mind with Lews Therin more and more, and he's not sure he's going to make it. Eventually this battle breaks out all around them, because he's got people like Perrin, he's got people like Dobrain, and others that maybe I'll forget, but a number of different people are trying to rescue him, and they have this huge battle with the Shido. And I'm not going to explain this very well. There's so much going on here, but Shido are a part of Aiel that are kind of on the evil side, you can say, and they are essentially, I can't remember all the specific details, but all I know is that there's this huge battle breaking out, and eventually, whether it's because the Aes Sedai shielding Rand get distracted, or because Rand actually achieves enlightenment of some sort and becomes stronger, he manages to break out of the box, and all the Aes Sedai shielding him are unconscious or nearly brain dead from being forced off of him. And there's this moment where Perrin and Dobrain and some others, and then they all kind of meet up, and there's still this huge battle going on, and it's like they're gonna lose. They're basically trying to figure out how to proceed. And this is where Taim, the Mahale, shows up. I think it's maybe through a gateway, and he brings all of these Ashaman. And this is something that had been building up. Rand gave amnesty to all men who could channel in the world, and he told them, come to me. He actually sent out people to recruit men who could channel, come to the Black Tower, which is kind of a weird name for his location, the White Tower and the Black Tower. But come to the Black Tower, and Taim is the guy who's training all of these Ashaman, teaching them how to be weapons. Rand wants the male channelers to be weapons because he's going to need them against the Dark One. But he uses them here to win the battle against the Shido. And there's this epic moment where Taim says, Ashaman, kill. And then you just see the most destruction you've ever seen in this series so far. The ground being ripped up underneath all these Shido, just bodies exploding. It's not even close. They were actually losing this battle, and now, within minutes, they have basically destroyed almost the entire Shido force. It's even Rand has trouble kind of coming to terms with what he's created here, because it's just the ultimate death and destruction. So they end up forcing the Shido off, and there are some Shido survivors that run away and they make some trouble later on, but they win this battle. And that's not even the best part. The best part is after this, when the Aes Sedai who had captured Rand are still around, and Rand forces them to swear fealty, and Aes Sedai cannot go back on their oaths, so he forces them to make an oath of fealty to him that they cannot break after they just captured him and tortured him for so long. And I can't remember if it's Rand or Taim. I think it's Taim who says it, because it's more of it sounds like him. But he basically says, kneel or you will be knelt. And it's just, this is how the book ends. And I can just imagine, I hope the show gets this part right. This is what I'm seeing is Do My as Wells, this big open field, destruction everywhere. And you see Rand and Taim standing in the middle with these 13 Aes Sedai in front of them, kneeling, and the camera's panning out, and you just see everybody kneel to Rand. And this is the moment where the world changes here. Aes Sedai do not kneel to any man. This is the first time anything like that has ever happened. And it's a clear shift in the power structure of the world. Rand, this is Rand's most badass moment. He's not necessarily super hard and going down the wrong path yet. He is still, this is where he becomes like badass Rand, and all these Aes Sedai are kneeling to him, and it's just really, really good. And once this book was done, I was raring to go on for more. I can talk for hours about this, so we should probably move on. But yeah, the Battle of Dumai's Wells, including the ending where the Aes Sedai kneel to him after they just had him in a box for so long. Oh, it's so good. So that's number 5. All right, here we are at the number 4 favorite moment of the Wheel of Time series. We're going back to Towers of Midnight for this one. This is chapter 54, The Light of the World. This is, we're bringing Matt in, okay? Matt has so many epic moments, but this one is my all-time favorite of Matt, where him, Tom, Marilyn, and Noel are in the Tower of Genji to try to rescue Moraine. And it took them so long to get here. I was happy when they finally made it here. And this entire section was just really, really good. They're in this tower. They're dealing with these alefin and eelfin creatures, which I am just fascinated by. They're like fox people or creatures and snake creatures. And I picture them as like just, wisping around, like super agile, super like twisty, very skinny, maybe long, lanky limbs kind of. And they're just very like, just supernatural. They're whispering things. They're chatting from all different directions. They use some music and singing to put them to sleep because there's these rules about being in this area that they break so that they can actually get through all the way to Moraine. There's a whole thing about getting there. They have to use Matt's luck, the Dark One's luck, to get there. They're even like rolling dice to see which way they have to go, which I thought was a little silly, but it fits Matt's character. They finally get to Moraine, and she's kind of like, suspended in this weird light. I think she's unconscious, and Matt tries to like reach in to get her, but the light burns him away. And then they end up surrounded by all these alefin and eelfin, just constantly like just chattering away at them about how like a price must be paid, the demands must be met, a sacrifice must be made. And there was a lot of foreshadowing to this. I missed all of it. There's even a part where Min sees a scale on top of on top of Matt's head that has like an eye on one side and the world on the other, and it's balanced. And there's other foreshadowing moments as well that I just totally missed. But basically, Matt was told like he'd have to give up the light of the world, and this is a moment where he realizes it, and they're kind of standing there, not sure what to do. They don't think they're going to be able to get Moraine out. But Matt just kind of steps forward, and, he has this like internal dialogue that this is what I just love about Matt so much is he hates heroes. He hates noblemen or noble people, nobles, I guess. He hates these types of things, but he is those types of things. And he says in his head, well, burn me for a fool. Maybe I am a hero after all. And he steps forward and he's like, I'll pay it. I'll pay the price. I'll meet the demand. Half the light of the world to save the world. And then right as soon as he says it, one of the Aelfin say, done. And like everything stops. And it's like this was the moment that everyone was waiting for. And these Aelfin and Aelfin are like, I don't know how to explain how it's like they're siphoning the tension out of the characters and the emotion and the indecisiveness. Like they're just living off of it, almost like a drug. They're like going kind of crazy, almost like an orgy sort of. Like they're just like having this moment, and then they just yank Matt's left eye right from its socket, and he falls to the ground screaming. And it's just, I didn't think he would make that kind of sacrifice for Moraine. Like Matt hates Aes Sedai. He didn't necessarily hate Moraine. Moraine probably be his favorite one out of all of them, but still, like I didn't see this coming. And when he did that, I was blown away. And I'm just like, oh my God, Matt, like you gave up your eye to save this person. Like that's a huge sacrifice. Now, granted, like he's thinking about it later, and he's like, man, like can I even still like be as good at battle with only one eye? Like my coordination's going to be all off, and it's not really the point, but the moment where he gives up his eye to save Moraine, and then there's even more shenanigans that happen after. And actually, part of that is Noel has to give up his life in order for Tom, Matt, and Moraine to be able to make it out, which is a pretty sad moment. That's where Matt finds out he was Jane Farstrider all along. It's so good, this entire chapter. And when they finally get to the Tower of Genji to save Moraine, it was one of my favorite moments of the book. Top 4, in fact. So that's this moment here. And even just going over it again, just when he's like, maybe I am a hero after all. I just love Matt. Matt is just a fantastic character. Okay, so before we get into my top 3 moments, I've got a bigger handful of honorable mentions than I probably should have, but come on. I mean, you've read Wheel of Time. There's just so many moments to choose from, and on any given day, some of these moments could have made the top 10. Others are just moments that I really like, but I didn't think deserved a spot to be spotlighted. I'll go through them as quickly as possible, but I still might just give real quick thoughts on them. First, Matt versus Gowan and Galad. When he's finally kind of healed from the dagger. He's not fully back to normal yet. He's actually still really weak and very hungry. He can eat just enough food for 10 people and still be hungry after because of all the healing that he's had to go through. He's wandering around Tarvalin and he sees Gowan and Galad. They're training to become warders. And these two are nobles. They're the sons of Morghese, the queen of Camelin. And Gowan and Galad, I think Matt needs some money or something, and he challenges these two to a 2v1 battle and bets them all the money in his pocket that he'll win. And they have the money easily, so they go for it, even though they're looking at this skinny farm boy who's like sick and almost emaciated, I think is the word. He just came back from the brink of death, and they've got all these onlookers, and the onlookers are there mostly for Gowan and Galad because they're so good looking and they're noblemen and they're really good at sword fighting. And Matt just kicks the Christ out of them with a wooden stick, just single-handedly just beats the crap out of it. It's not even close, and it really kind of sets Matt apart from the beginning of the book to who he really truly becomes for the rest of the entire series. One criticism against Matt is that for the first few books he's kind of a flawed character because he's been impacted by the dagger for so long that he was sort of just hadn't come into his own. This is when he comes into his own, and from here on out, he's fantastic. Another moment when Aram, the Tinker, decides to pick up a sword to fight and help Perrin defend the two rivers. In my opinion, this was a great moment, and I loved it. I thought it was because you get a lot of backstory on the Way of the Leaf and on the Tuathalan, and their passivity and why they don't pick up weapons. And when Aram actually decides to fight, it's powerful and it's a huge moment. His family is crying and they kind of have to disown him if he does this because it's just against everything they believe in. But Aram doesn't care. He wants Perrin to train him. He gets Tam to train him later, and Aram becomes a fighter. And I'm a little disappointed on how Aram's arc ended. I feel like if I ever make a video about my least favorite moments, Aram's character arc will come into that. And if you want to see that, let me know. Okay, next up, Iguane defending the tower versus the Shan. So when the Shan are attacking the White Tower, and Iguane is actually a prisoner here, she gets free because of all the chaos, and she's kind of sowed some seeds with some of the novices in the tower that actually start trusting her. She forms a link, I think, with them, and uses all this power to just start blasting Shan out of existence. And I just picture her walking across the ramparts of the tower and just blasting dragons out of the sky with her battle mage capabilities. I mean, she was a green Aja after all, so she really showcases that. And it's a moment where they kind of let you know, okay, Iguane is ultra powerful. So when she's defending the tower and she's reveling in it, she feels like she's this ultimate badass Aes Sedai, and she's reveling in it. It's really, really good. Love that moment, and it really kind of cements her as one of the most powerful characters in the entire series. Okay, next up, Rand's speech about how it was not about him, but about everyone in the world. So when he's locked in this kind of deadlock with the Dark One, this is in the last book, and he's arguing with him, he's essentially, this moment is where he tells Shaitan, like, it's not about me. Shaitan is all, concerned about overcoming Rand, but it's not about Rand. It's about all of these other people, everyone in the world who is, fighting for the sake of the world. And I'm not going to butcher it here. There are some people who sometimes read, like, this is a moment that makes most people's list of favorite moments in the book. And I mean, you can read his monologue there where he's just saying it was about this person. It was about that person. It was about a person who would go to the end of the world to tell you he's not a hero, but at the end of the day, he's a hero, and all of this. And it's a really epic moment. And it shows like he cares about everybody, and the Dark One should too. Okay, another one. Lan killing Demon Dread was an absolute epic sword battle. It was a little silly how Lan was able to make it all the way there, given the the amount of Trollocs that were against him. But they used Tam's Two Rivers archers to clear a path, and he ends up having this ultimate badass showdown with Demon Dread. Demon Dread has already killed Gowan. He took the arm off of Galad. And he has established himself to be much more powerful than all of these people, but Lan is something else. If there was no channeling, and if there was no Dark One or none of this supernatural stuff, then Lan would be the absolute strongest character in the entire book, and this is where he gets to really show it. I'm a little torn. He ends up surviving, even though it's implied that he died. He has this epic line where he's like, I told you I didn't come here to win. I came here to kill you. And so they kill each other, but Lan ends up surviving. And maybe it could have been better if he died, but regardless, it was still an ultimate badass moment for Lan, and Lan is a fantastic character in the entire series, so we got to show him some love. The next moment, when Rand almost kills Min because he's being forced to by, I think it's Semirog, the Forsaken. She has him under compulsion, and she forces Rand to take Min by the neck and basically start snuffing the life out of her. Min, we're not talking about a lot in this video. Min, in my opinion, is the ultimate one for Rand. I mean, she was there through all of his hardest moments. She truly understood him and tried so hard to keep him grounded. And Rand has this thing where he's in love with Min, Aviendha, and Elaine. But if it was up to me, I would say Min and Rand, those two were meant for each other. And in this moment when he's staring at her and he's trying so hard not to, all he can think about is like what he's doing, and he knows what he's doing, but he can't stop himself. He eventually, it's a heartbreaking moment, but he eventually resorts to the true power for the first time, the power that the Dark Lord uses to break free from Semirog. And I think he just murders her like right on the spot. I can't remember what he does with her. But even after this moment, for like several days or maybe even weeks, the two of them can't really be normal with each other, because on the one hand, Min was just, even though she loves him and she knows it wasn't his fault, like how do you get the vision of the one you love choking the life out of your head? Eventually, thankfully, she gets over that, and and Rand too, he doesn't know if he's ever going to do that to her again. This is why he can't be close to anybody. This is exactly this moment. And this is one of the catalysts to send Rand towards the ultimate darkness. And, it's just an incredibly epic moment. Almost at the end of these, I know it's too many, but come on, please, just let me. Rand's sword fight with his father, one-handed, was, any moment where you have Rand and his father and they're having a real moment together, it's just, it's top tier stuff. And Tam is dueling him. They're sparring together, and he's actually kicking the hell out of Rand. He's getting Rand up to speed on one-handed combat, because after Rand loses his hand, which is not even mentioned in his list at all, he loses his hand and he starts to rely on the one power a lot more. He's still a very skilled swordsman, worthy of the Heron Mark blade, but he doesn't use it as much anymore because he can just destroy things with the power. So this is a moment where Tam is just slapping Rand around, and I think he ties an arm behind his back and everything, and he's like, no, I'll be on the same level as you. And it's just a really, really good moment. Okay, I love that moment. And then finally, this is not a meme. You're gonna think it's a meme. I almost added it to my top 10 list, but that would have been a meme. But honestly, the Jack of the Shadows song, whenever it came up, I was 100% into it. The Jack of the Shadows poem slash song, I can't read this poem without feeling emotion, particularly for Matt and the Band of the Red Hand, because the way I interpret it, this is a song sung by the Band of the Red Hand in honor of Matt. They trust in him and they love him so much that they'll do anything for him. And this song is just all about how we'll follow Lord Matt wherever he goes and dance with Jack of the Shadows. And it's, there's a YouTube video. You should search Jack of the Shadows if you haven't already. It's got like 400,000 views. It's a song. It's like a tavern song, and I love it. I listen to it way more than I should. Okay, that's going to do it for the side moments, okay? There was like, I don't know, 8. This is a top 10 video, and I gave you 8 honorable mentions. So we'll move on now to the top 3 favorite moments of the Wheel of Time. Okay, number 3. This one takes part in The Gathering Storm, chapter 47, The One He Lost. This moment, this one might make me like the most emotional. When Rand finally sees his father, this is before the one-handed duel, and even before when Rand has his moment on top of Dragonmount where he finally, fixes himself. This moment where he meets his father kind of leads to that. And I'm telling you, like, when I was listening to this, my eyes were watering. I was tearing up over this because Rand has been forcing himself to not feel love for so long, to not feel happiness or friendship or anything for so long, because it's an ultimate weakness. And he didn't know this was going to happen. He just kind of walks in this room and his father's there. And it's like this reunion after so long. Like, it might even be the first book. I can't remember. It might be the first book. Correct me if I'm wrong. If there was another moment when they met and they talked. But it's just such an emotional moment. And it's so well written when they are, they're talking and Tam calls him son. And then he's like, well, they've gone ahead and made a king out of you. And now you're the dragon reborn. I don't even know if I can call you son anymore. And Rand actually agrees. And he's like, well, no, I'm the dragon reborn. I know you're not my real father. He's learned about his real father and his mother. But, I mean, Tam's his father. Like, there's no question. And they're having this reunion. And Rand is thinking, like, I just want to give him a hug. Like, he just wants to let everything go and just hug his father and just talk about stuff. But Tam ends up making a mistake where, he's realizing like how far gone Rand is. And he's like, wow, like you really are like barely yourself at all. He's like, I can't believe I didn't know about this. That damn woman should have told me earlier. And then Rand is like, what woman? Because Cadsuane is a fantastic character in her own right. I'm actually a fan of Cadsuane. I think some people are not. I really like Cadsuane. And I understood what she was doing. But Rand hated her. And he viewed her as like pulling his strings, manipulating everything. And he actually exiled her. And he threatened to murder her. Like he exiled her from the group and said, I better never see your face again or else I'll just wipe you off the face of this planet. Like with true vitriol and anger. So he truly hates this person. So when Tam brings up Cadsuane and said that Cadsuane sent him to him, Rand loses it. He just absolutely loses it. And he nearly kills his own father. And it's this moment, it's the most emotional moment, in the series, in my opinion. And it is, he sees his father looking at him horrified and just barely forces himself to make a gateway. And he makes a gateway to Abu Dar and leaves his father's horrified eyes behind. And, this is where he goes to Abu Dar and he's in this mindset where he almost killed his father and he's ready to just end everything. So that's why he goes to Abu Dar, because he's going to just wipe the Shan off the face of the planet in his like rage. But that's not the point. The point is like, just when you're sitting with them and you know Rand is not right, but you want him to feel like this love for his father, and you just see what happens, and you can't blame anybody. You can't blame Cadsuane. You can't even blame Rand. Obviously, you can't blame Tam. It's a fantastic moment, and even though it's not a happy moment at all. You know, I was just emotionally invested, and after that chapter, I had to like take a break because I was like, just I kept thinking about it, and even now thinking about it, you know, it's emotional, and it's a all time favorite moment for me. Number 3 now, but on any other day could be number 1. So that like I said, Gathering Storm, chapter 47. I mean, Brandon Sanderson, I don't know how much of this was him, how much of it was Robert Jordan, but you know, there's definitely a kick up in character, relationship, and dialogue, and this is a true example of that. Sorry. All right, that's number 3. So let's move on. All right, so number 2, my second favorite moment of the Wheel of Time. This is towards the end of the Shadow Rising, book 4. It's a bit of a bigger arc. It's not just one chapter from what I remember. My research tells me it's from chapters 43 to 45-ish, where Perrin defends the two rivers. This moment, like I said, it's not just the defense of the two rivers. It's a lot of things. It's Perrin realizing that his family was murdered by Trollocs, even though it wasn't Trollocs. It was actually Padam Fain and the White Cloaks. But it was, you know, he thinks it was the Trollocs. And he has this moment with Fail where he kind of breaks down for the first time and shows her all of his feelings and emotion. And she comforts him. And she's kind of, grooming is a really bad word in most cases, but I don't know another term. There probably is a better word, but she's kind of like grooming him into being a lord, right? She's helping him out, and she's helping him take over the situation in the two rivers. Everyone's looking up to him as, you know, Lord Golden Eyes, and he essentially takes leadership of the two rivers. Even Tam gives leadership to Perrin, and they orchestrate the defense against the Trollocs, and even the White Cloaks that are there just kind of messing with shit. They don't necessarily attack the two rivers, but they don't help, and they're causing problems. And the way, this is one I gotta shout out Michael Kramer, because the way he was narrating this section, like his voice is so somber, so sad, talking about how the two rivers people were even having like women and children lining up to fight against the Trollocs. I really thought they were going to lose. Like, I was sure they were going to lose. I was very, very nervous, and I should have known better looking back. Book 4, you're not going to lose Perrin, obviously, but I don't know. I mean, they could have lost, and Perrin could have survived somehow, but I was just certain they were going to lose, and just everything came together to make them just barely able to eke it out. You know, you have this side thing with Loyal and Gaul, who are off on a mission to try to close the Waygate to stop the Trollocs from being able to keep filtering in. You've got Fail, who goes off on like I mean, Perrin basically sends her away because he knows they're going to lose. And he sends her away, and I think she's supposed to go to like Camelin or something, which is way further, but instead she goes to a nearby Still Two Rivers settlement, or Emmons Field settlement, and you know, brings a backup army from them and helps to save the day. And at the end of the book, it's fine. They all win, and everything is pretty much okay. I'm sure some Two Rivers people die, but it didn't seem like it was anyone that important. It ends up being like a victory for the good guys, but I think it was more just everything leading up to that. Like, I was certain they were going to lose. I remember I was walking to work and I was listening to the audiobook, and I'm just like, you know, things were just getting started, and I was needing to go to work like I do here soon in real life, like right now. And I was just like, how am I going to work when these guys are going to lose they're going to lose the Two Rivers? But they eventually win, and it's all okay, you know. But just, I'll never forget, like, when I was going through that book and that part of the story, I'm like, this story, like, there's so many moments I could say that about where I'm like, now I'm hooked. But this was definitely one of them, and it really elevated Perrin as one of my favorite characters. And yeah, it's my second favorite moment in the Wheel of Time. All right, guys, here we are. The number 1 favorite moment for me in the Wheel of Time series. I've said this a few times, so it's kind of going to sound stupid, but when this moment happened, I was also walking to work during this time. I'll never forget this. It was overcast day. It was raining slightly. I was walking to work. It's like a 15-minute walk, and I was listening to this part, and I had to listen to it again when I got home from work later because I was just so shook. I was so shook by this moment, also taking part in the Shadow Rising. This is when Rand is in the Stone of Tyr, and there is like an attack on the Stone of Tyr. He actually meets Lanfear here. There's a lot of stuff that actually happens that I don't really remember because, I mean, book 4 was so long ago, but I know that Lanfear is here, and they have this dialogue, and Lanfear's telling him that, like, you know, you'll be an amazing person. You'll be even better than Lews Therin. Lanfear's in love with him, but he doesn't obviously want to do that. But they end up, there's this attack that happens inside the Stone of Tyr, and you know, there's this giant battle, and I think Lanfear is even helping them try to get through it, at least for one moment, I believe. And eventually it ends up, something happens. I can't remember what happens. I don't know. This part is locked out of my brain. Something happens to Rand that kind of like sets him off, and he uses the most power he had ever used up to this point. He creates this giant, if I remember it right, I picture it like this giant ball of death that is kind of rotating through the Stone of Tyr and just zapping all the evil forces out of existence. I think it was Trollocs. I can't remember everything about this, but there was just this attack that happened, and Rand uses all of this power. It's only book 4. He hasn't really realized his true power yet. This is him using the most he's ever used. And he just destroys all the evil forces in the castle or palace or the Stone of Tyr. And then in the aftermath, he finds this like young girl who's dead. And he like kneels over her, and he is just so emotional about everything. And people are telling him he's all powerful, like he's the dragon reborn. He can do whatever he wants. So he has this moment where he picks up this young girl who's dead, and he tries his absolute hardest to resurrect her. And it doesn't work. And actually, I think he might have even been like mutilating the body by accident in trying to resurrect it. It's this gruesome scene. I think the body's maybe floating. I mean, I can't remember, but I'll never forget just how I felt when I was listening to this. And again, kudos to Michael Kramer. He gets the emotion that Rand is going through so well. I was just shook. Like I remember I got to work and I had to just sit there, and I couldn't like start right away because I was just thinking about this, and he was trying to resurrect this girl using all the power, and Moiraine is there, and she's trying to yell like, you can't, you're not the creator. You're the dragon reborn, but you're not the creator. You cannot give life to a dead soul. And it's just an agonizing, sad moment for Rand. Like, even though he just displayed this gigantic display of power that he can do almost anything he wants, he can't do this. He can't bring back this dead girl. We don't even know who the girl is. It's like literally like a no name. But it doesn't matter because it's more about what he's going through and about how he's trying to do the impossible, and it's impossible. He cannot. So it's just this moment. I wish I could tell it better. It you know, it sucks that it happened so long ago. The fact that I can't really remember all the details about what had happened, but I remember the feeling that I felt while I was listening to it. I'm telling you, like, I'm pretty sure this moment is on many people's list of favorite moments. I'm gonna say it. When I listened to this, I was realizing that I was experiencing one of the best stories I'm ever gonna experience. And I say that knowing that I'm somewhat inexperienced with the fantasy genre and even just novels and big epic series in general. You know, I have some experience for sure, but I'm not the most experienced, and you know, maybe I'm wrong. Do I hope that one day I'll feel something as strong as I did then? I guess so, but it'll be kind of sad to let this one go as my all-time just favorite moment. I went back home and I made my wife listen to the chapter just because I wanted to hear it again. I was like, listen to this. Like, this is epic fantasy. And it was emotional, and there was, you know, power, and you know, there would be like CGI effects in the movie. I mean, the show, man. I mean, right now, as of recording this, the show is on episode 6. I am of the first season. I am overall pretty happy with it. I mean, they have some huge shoes to fill. These top 10 moments are 10 of them. And, you know, there's many others. I'm very, very curious to hear your guys' list down below. Please feel free to correct me on things that I was wrong about. I've only read the book once, okay? And I finished it like a few weeks ago. But I had to make this video mostly for myself. I feel myself getting invested in a couple new series now. I'm listening to Stormlight Archive, which is another epic fantasy, and I'm also listening to The First Law, and I'm trying to branch out a little bit more. And these series are supposedly very good, and I believe people when they say that. But I needed to just get this off my chest before I could really commit. You know, The Wheel of Time, it's still a few weeks back that I finished it, but I'm telling you, you know, if you've listened to this video but you haven't read the books or listened to the audiobooks, like, it's still worth it to do it. This series was worth the years of time I put into it, even if it wasn't all the best. There are definitely some moments that just kind of went in one ear and out the other. Some moments I fell asleep to. I'm gonna admit something terrible. I fell asleep to the moment where Varen came out as a black sister to someone. I forget who, because I was sleeping during it. But I guess Iguane. But, you know, it's some of that. Sometimes that happens when you're reading a 14 or 15 book series that's just so long. But I'm telling you guys, I loved it so much that I had to make a series like this. I am not a booktuber at all. But if you want to see me make a couple more videos on this, if you like my opinion, you like my what I talk about with this series, I have a couple ideas I can do. So let me know if you would be interested in that. And you know what? If this goes over even slightly well, maybe I'll make similar videos for some of the other series that I'm listening to. Although with long times in between, because it takes a long time to finish this stuff. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm feeling the weight off my shoulders already. Just actually noticing my mic is still recording. This video will go out, and I can already just feel a little bit lighter having had a chance to talk about this stuff. So thank you so much if you've made it all the way here, and let me know what you think, and maybe we'll see you later.